So, I thought I'd start a new series, videos. The production quality is not going to be great because I'm just going to do it on my phone, wherever. But hopefully, weather allowing, it'll be somewhere nice. I think the first thing to address is who, what, where, why. Who am I? What am I doing here on this channel? And why do I do it? Well, I'm Jay. I live in Cornwall. I'm an electronic musician, composer, programmer. I haste to say I'm not a producer because I rarely use samples or other people's work. But I specialise in microtones musically. And excuse me, that's my dog. Getting arsey. Okay, so back to the theme in hand. Who am I? Right, okay, so I had a childhood education in music which was very defined, I should say. Right from an early age I was encouraged to play music and in particular sing. I used to play clarinet up to grade 5, but more importantly I used to sing in choral ensembles. One of the greatest experiences of my life was singing in Norwich Cathedral with a large ensemble and a full orchestra, the Hallelujah Chorus. And as a result, I've always been kind of interested in music, but nothing ever really felt right to me. Everything about the notes that everyone else uses seemed wrong. They just didn't seem quite right to my ear. And part of that is because the instruments that I was playing a clarinet, which although is a 12-tone instrument, there's a lot of bending involved. In a clarinet you can not only bend up, you can also bend down with the use of the reed. And also I was singing with a choir, and quite often we would stray into pure harmonics, where the alto, for instance, would be harmonizing with the tenor, but out of key with the rest of the orchestra. And I think when I started getting interested in electronic music, which was in my teens, and I started going clubbing, raving in places like the Warehouse in Plymouth and the Bowgie in Quantuck Bay, where Aphex Twin and Billy Nasty started up. The Warehouse was also pretty known for pretty much launching likes of Paul Oakenfold, various other names. And I was also involved in putting on raves. Went to a few when I was younger, and eventually ended up being a sound engineer for drum and bass raves in the local area. Nothing ever really kind of felt right to me. There was always something missing from my music, and I think there may be people out there who feel the same, that somehow whatever combination of the 12 notes that they come up with doesn't hit right, for want of a better word, to use a Gen X saying. Check out my Riz. Okay, so I went to college in Estover Music College, a place where Weapons of Sound, the famous steel band, was born. And I did a BTEC diploma in music education, and during that time I got to play some of the best instruments in the world, electronic instruments. including JP8080, Juno 106, Jupiter 8, DX7. Actually, it might have been a DX10 that I was using. All large mixing desk, everything you could want as a teenager, or early 20. I was in my early 20s at the time, and I had my one workstation, which was my big Trinity, which I still have to this day. You can occasionally see it in some of my tracks, and it was during that time when I started to realise that this was what I loved. This is what I wanted to do, and I went on to produce some tracks. I played a couple of gigs out, but I never really took it seriously. I was more interested in getting into places free. So as a result, I tended to do mastering jobs and engineering jobs for the raves. In particular, I used to help out with the CD production for various art DJs who would come through the White Rabbit, Magic Bullet breakbeat scene. And also I did some productions that were played during the local drum and bass scene, although drum and bass isn't really where my heart's at. I also had friends who were heavy drum and bass fans, so I had the opportunity to go up to places like Bristol and Exeter to see some pretty famous performances from the likes of Ronnie Size, super sharp shooters shooting shots back in that day, when I suppose drum and bass was really taking off. It was more jungle in those days. So that's me, that's my musical history. I suppose influences which may help you to work out why my music sounds like it does. I'm actually quite heavily influenced by early 80s pop music, Propaganda, 66 Sputnik, Howard Jones, Genesis. It is pop music, despite what other people might say. But again, it didn't really fit. I'm quite heavily influenced by the likes of Fields and Nephilim, because I used to be a goth for my sins. The Shaman, early Shaman, Ozric Tentacles, which is a very special band. If you don't know who Ozric Tentacles are, go check them out. They're a crazy psychedelic rock band, a real experience. And more recently, Ace Dana, carbon-based life forms, Maddie Ashman, Tigran Hamasyan, who's kind of, I guess, a throw forward from my interest in jazz from when I used to play clarinet. So you can expect like quite a wide variety of synth-based, synth-wavy, dubby kind of psychedelic music from this channel. I'm also quite heavily influenced by 90s breakbeat, right the way through the 90s, right up to mid-2000s, when dubstep started coming in, which really wasn't my bag, to be honest. It just wasn't fast enough. So that's me, that's my influences. That's who I am. I've been married for 36 years. I'm very happy. I'm a full-time carer as well as a musician, so it's not always easy for me to travel, and not always easy for me to meet up with people, but at the same time I lead a pretty comfortable life. It's not I'm not rich or anything, but you know, I can afford the gear and I can afford the time. And the time is more important than the gear, as many of you know. So what do I do? Okay, so what I do on this channel is mostly hardware jams, which is a Facebook group called Hardware Jams. And you know, it's raining out there, dog. Why didn't you come in out of the rain? Okay, so Hardware Jams is mostly weekend challenges. So a lot of the pieces that you'll hear on my YouTube, with the exception of the ones in the Under the Counter playlist, are unfinished work in progresses that I use Hardware Jams as an experimental platform. It allows me to experiment with scales and tunings. Within scales are notes within the tunings. Okay, if you understand that. So I might be using a 22 note tuning, but only using a certain subset of those notes, and those will be scales. So there's the difference between the two. So I tend to use Hardware Jams as a way of trying new stuff out, as a way of enhancing my craft. I've still got a lot to learn, but I hope that I've also got a lot to share in the coming weeks and months and years. So what I tend to do is I tend to try to present microtonal music in a way that the modern listener can equate to. So one of the criticisms I have about modern microtonal music is I think a lot of microtonalists, how can I say this politely? I wouldn't say that they make bad music, because there really isn't any good or bad in music. Art is art. But what I would say is that some of the time I feel that a lot of microtonalists make disingenuous music. Music that shows off their skill within an unused or unfamiliar tuning. But doesn't stop to think of what that might feel like. And I think this is something that we see a lot of in this postmodernist world, is with the lack of meaning and the lack of definition, and the throwing open the doors to the unlimited spectrum that is art. I feel that sometimes artists and musicians do something because it's cool, not because it makes you feel something, not because it tells a story. And this is a big problem I have with microtonalism. A lot of it sounds very awkward. The sound design is very amateurish, or just not worked on at all in many cases. There are a lot of microtonalists out there who are quite happy to sit down with a single sine wave or a single saw wave and just play a piece. And compositionally it might be great, but it sounds absolutely awful. And for those people that question why should I do my sound design for my microtonalism? Well, there's kind of one big reason why it's important to have your sound design of a high quality. And the main reason is that when you're constructing using these tuning systems, the timbre of the sound, the different harmonics within the sound, quite often dictate what notes can go together. So for instance, if you're using a sub-minor version of a third harmonic in your tuning, you can't use the third harmonic without that rubbing within the notes. So when you're making microtonal design, it's not just about making new tunings, but it's about making sure that the harmonics and the resonant pitches, harmonic and the resonant peaks within the sound design don't clash in the same way. Someone's just arrived. We'll just pause it there a minute and we'll come back to this. Okay. So we're back. I think I talked about pulling his ear off. Okay, so where were we? Yes, my problem with microtonalists and sound design. You cannot do microtonal music without doing microtonal sound design too. Because when you get notes which are very close together, they rub and they cause what's very uncomfortable dissonance. Now that might be what you want in some cases. Maybe you want to generate some kind of shimmer or secondary LFO or oscillation from having two notes together. Maybe if it was 5 Hertz apart, you get a 5 Hertz modulation, amplitude modulation to the two as the phases cross. Right, so it's very important to do the sound design, and that's one of the reasons why I started this channel, because for me, making microtonal music is such a wonder. It's such a, every time I start with the new tuning, I'm never quite sure where it's going to take me, what kind of adventure I'm going to find around the corner, what kind of new colour I'm going to find from my, what is basically techno jazz, which is basically what I do. Okay, so that kind of covers the what and the why. I think it's worth saying what to expect from this channel in the future and my plans for the future. One of the things I've realised from working within a synth community, shouts out to Hardware Jams, shout outs to Symptoms of Reality Crew, and a bunch of other people I can't care to mention right now, is that I know quite a lot, and it may be specialised. I don't know everything, but it may be specialised, and I feel that when I look at a YouTube channel, I want to learn something. I want to be inspired. As a musician, especially a musician like me, I find it very difficult to listen to other people's music, especially if it's 12-tone, because I can hear the fourths and the thirds being out of key. I can hear how bad the sixths are. It really grates on me, especially when you combine things like saturation, where you've got harmonics grating on other harmonics because the whole tuning system is out of whack. Again, another little bugbear of mine. So what I want to do going forwards with this channel is spend a little bit more time having these short little talks, though I suspect it's probably not going to be that short by the time I finish this video, and trying to share with you ways in which you can, without telling you what to write, of course, because I wouldn't want to lessen the colours in the world, but to try and share some of the things that I've picked up over the years, and the point of view of somebody's like pretty much starting out in this field, in particular, over the 2 years. And I'll be talking to you more about microtonal tunings, the history of microtonalism. I have a strong interest in archaeoacoustics, as you can tell from my Procession album. And also certain therapeutic practices and esoteric implications of coming off the well-trod path into sonic alchemy. Going forwards, we'll be talking more about some of the design philosophy that goes into my pieces of music, and if there's a particular tuning that's of particular interest or a way of creating a tuning, then I'll try and share that with you, as well as all the skills and software needed for starting out on this path. Those people who have already been doing it for a while will know some of the major pieces of software, but that's something we'll talk at another time. Now, regarding my channel, I'm not expecting people to like all my music. It makes people uncomfortable sometimes, and you know, I like messy music. You know, none of my stuff isn't fully optimized, or you know, I don't tend to go through tracks afterwards and making sharp EQ cuts, and I'm really unfond of compression, although I do use clippers a fair bit. I'd ask you to, if you're going to listen to my music, I'd ask you to listen to it all the way through if you can, because it just helps me in the algorithm. And make a comment if you've got questions about the particular piece of music, or if you've got questions about the gear that I used, which is very limited, but I'm really pleased with my current setup. Then drop a bell in the comments, and I hope to be seeing more of you in the future. Okay, peace out.